Welcome to the SAG-AFTRA Foundation's Conversations at Home. I'm Dominic Patten from Deadline Hollywood. Now, the foundation has a COVID-19 relief fund to support SAG-AFTRA artists with basic needs like rent, food, health, and healthcare costs during this global pandemic and industry shutdown. Donations are 100% tax deductible and directly support performers in dire need. Information on how you can support this effort can be found in the description of this video. With that, it is my pleasure to introduce Dakota Fanning from The ALIENIST, Angel of Darkness. Welcome, Dakota.
Hey, thank you.
Now, before we start talking, I want to give everyone a little brief if they haven't seen the show, which you should have seen, both seasons 1 and 2, and which you can find online, and I recommend you do so. Set in New York in the Gilded Age of the late 19th century and early 20th century, this second season of the TNT series, based on Cal Carr's 1997 novel, based on both his novels, actually, debuted on July 19th and was one of the most acclaimed series of the summer. Picking Angel of Darkness as the show to watch that week in my review, I said it outdoes its predecessor, especially with Dakota's performance as Sarah Howard, an ambitious woman fighting for justice and fighting against crime and discrimination in her own time. And with that, welcome, Dakota.
Hey.
So you guys, there was a bit of a delay. There was about 2 years between, I'm going to call it season 1 and season 2, though I know they kind of stand as standalones if you've read the books and seen the shows. A lot happened in that time, especially about Sarah's character. So for some of the people who are joining us today who are not entirely familiar with the books, which I have to admit I'm a little surprised because they were the biggest sellers of the 1990s, but give us a little sense about Sarah Howard, and especially give us a sense about the evolution that we saw happen off screen between seasons 1 and season 2.
Yeah, well, we meet in the first episode, we see that Sarah has opened her own detective agency. So when we met her in The Alienist, she was the first woman to hold a position at the police department as a secretary to the police commissioner at the time, who was Theodore Roosevelt. And it becomes very clear in the first installment that she has bigger aspirations and bigger things to do career-wise. And so right away, we see that she has opened her own detective agency. She has, other young women that she's, sort of a mentor to that are employed by her, and that she's setting off into society as a professional woman, which of course at the time was very taboo and not socially accepted. And you see that the kinds of cases that she's getting are not quite as sort of meaty and society, aren't going to change society in the way that she hopes to. And then we see how that changes and how she uses her will and personality and strengths to solve a new crime with the help, again, of course, of Dr. Laszlo Kreisler and John Moore, played by Daniel Bruhl and Luke Evans. And another change that we see, I think, from the start in Angel of Darkness is she's no longer having to prove herself to sort of her inner circle. There was still a little bit of that tension in The Alienist, where she was kind of having to prove herself to John Moore and prove herself to Dr. Kreisler and earn her position in that trio. And I think something that's very nice in this second time around is that she holds a very clear position in that trio, and they respect her as their equal and as their peer, and she's no longer having to fight so hard in the confines of her own office.
Now, let's talk a little bit about on the other side of the camera, which is, of course, as you, Luke, and Daniel, you have an amazing symmetry as a trio. And it kind of taking a little bit of what you said earlier, there's a great equality. We see this as the three of you as actors. That relationship with actors, especially when you have equal leads in something, can sometimes be a little difficult. But you guys seem to have a great ease with each other. Give us a sense of what that was like on the first season, and how you think, if it did, I might be wrong, evolve for the second season.
Yeah, I think the greatest thing about these two experiences has been the friendship that has been created amongst the three of us. And it was so strong right away when we first met. We were all in Budapest, Hungary for 6 months, all away from home. And so we kind of became this little family, and were, wrapping and deciding where we were all going to go to dinner afterwards. Like it was really, it was such a bonding experience, and we got along so well, on set and off set. And we were so excited to get to kind of, reconnect and do it all over again. And I think the way that it evolved the second time was we were able to collaborate, I think, professionally in a deeper way, because we all were coming in to the second season with like a real ownership of our individual characters, and also we're able to be even stronger, like bouncing boards for like ideas about what we thought was right for our characters, and kind of able to defend, not defend, but you know what I mean, sort of fight for what we thought those characters would do, and in a deeper way. So I think it was kind of an even deeper collaboration professionally the second time, because we kind of walked into it with a real point of view. And I think it was something that was different for all three of us. We had never really returned to a character that we had played for 10 hours and then playing the same character for another 8 hours.
And that's part of what I was going to ask, because I know for you, and I know for Luke, I don't know Daniel that well, but I know for Luke too, is that immersion into a character. I mean, obviously, Dakota, so many of us know you from the historical stuff, that you were the youngest person ever nominated for a SAG award way back in the day. Hey, keeping it. But, but the thing is your chops are still stronger than ever, in fact. And so when you deal with, as an actor, and I mentioned this partially because we are talking at a SAG Foundation event, as an actor, what is that process like? Because it isn't, I went on a project, I worked with people, I gained ownership. We hear that all the time. But this is something where you're coming back. This is a new strength. And, there has been some time. So you guys have evolved. As an actor, for yourself, what does that process involve?
It definitely felt that way. Like it definitely felt that I was coming back to this story and to this character with an even clearer point of view about who she was and what she would do, and very protective of her and all the returning characters. I felt very protective of all of them, and it was actually a very kind of comforting feeling. It was,
oh, really?
It was nice to, it was just nice to, I don't know, kind of be sort of the authority on Sarah Howard. You know what I mean? Like I felt a deep sense of knowing of who she was. And we were also collaborating with new people on the writer and director side. And so, hearing their feelings and their thoughts, and kind of, getting to sort of go back and forth was really creatively fulfilling.
Obviously one of the things about Sarah Howard is she's a trailblazer. And it's one of the things, I think, when people first read the novels back in the 90s, they were surprised how this was actually one of the, I wouldn't even say subtext, one of the major narratives of this is feminism. We might not call it that at that time, but it was. Mm-hmm. Then again, we're not calling this psychoanalytics at this time. We're calling it alienist. So different words, but same meaning. But for you, you have also been a trailblazer through your career. And so what do you think for you as an actor, because you have inhibited this role, you own this role now, whether or not there are more seasons or not, this is you. For you as a woman, and I hope you don't object me asking this question, what was playing that character like?
Well, I think, Sarah, I think the biggest sort of, if I had to pick an overall like header to her story, is I think both times around, but especially in The Angel of Darkness, it's kind of what it means to be a modern woman. What does that mean? Do you have to choose between a family life and a professional life? And of course, in the confines of the time that Sarah Howard's living, it's very clear you cannot have it all. You do have to choose, and really you should only choose the family life and to be a wife and mother. And
that comes up at a point in the series.
And it comes up many
times. No spoiler alerts, but you and Luke have a talk at one point.
Sure, we can. It's safe to say at this point the journey between Luke and Sarah was not over and kind of continues. But yeah, I definitely see that as sort of her, what she's grappling with throughout, especially the second season. And I think that that's something that all women can relate to, no matter what time they've lived or are living. I think it's something that of course, we're taking greater strides in not feeling that you have to choose between those things, or that there is no right or wrong way to live your life as a woman. But I do think that it's something that women still, it hasn't just magically gone away
it's still a question and part of the equation.
It's still part of the equation, still a huge question. And I think something about this show in general, not just with this particular topic, but with many topics, I think it's just been so fascinating to see the things that have or have not changed or progressed, and the issues that, are the themes of the books written in the 90s, and then the shows made in the 2000 teens, whatever you call that.
What do we call this now? I guess
I don't know.
The early 21st century.
Yes, exactly. Dealing with issues in the 1890s. We're having the same conversations now.
Well, I mean, one of those conversations that clearly comes up, and you mentioned it earlier with Teddy Roosevelt, who appears in season 1 of The Alienist in his role, sometimes forgotten by many people, that he was the police commissioner of New York before he was the governor, and then of course president. In I say season 2, but I'll just say Angel of Darkness, we see people like William Randolph Hearst. We see references to Sigmund Freud. We see the outer world becoming a part of this. William Randolph Hearst is very much a part of this, and the notion of the media. And for someone who has been in the media spotlight most of your life, how did you feel that depiction worked? And I want to jump back to what you were just talking about, because I think that's what you were talking about to some degree, its connection to today.
Yeah. I think that, with Hearst, and another thing I love about the story in general is the weaving in the historical figures into kind of a fictional world. I think,
and you guys do it very, very well. And that's a hard gig. That's a hard gig.
I think so too. And I think that it really kind of grounds it in a reality and gives people a very clear, reference point for the exact time period that we're talking about.
And I say that knowing that I'm speaking to the woman who played Squeaky Farm in Once Upon a Time in America.
That's true.
No, but you know what I mean? A lot of times, one of the things that worked in that is, a lot of times historical figures can just become people in lousy wigs.
Right.
What you guys do in The Alienist is you make them, especially with Theodore Roosevelt and then with Hearst, you make them a part of it. If you don't know who these people are, you think that they're really well-written characters in your story. And that's a triumph.
That's nice to hear. Yes, I definitely agree. I think, one of the big things that we talk about, we have, the women's rights movement and the suffragettes and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and we have, the corruption in the police department, and, we have the sort of the media kind of fake news, the birth of fake news, I guess. Yellow journalism and all of that. I think it's important to show people my age who think that these things are kind of, I don't know, just to see when they started. And I think that, while this show is entertainment at the end of the day, it is kind of, Daniel always says this when we've done interviews together, it's like a very entertaining history lesson.
Yeah. And I think one thing, and I think you were about to say is, I do think that often we all succumb to this thing that I call era egotism, which we act like the era we live in is the worst, the most important, the best.
Sure.
And when you watch something like both the Alienist seasons, you see so many of the things that we talk about in America, we have been talking about and dealing with for hundreds of years.
And I think, for me, that's one of the biggest purposes of, the creative world and art is to examine things in our everyday life, whether they're themes or feelings or emotions or kinds of people or, this is obviously so much about alienism or, psychology. And so the kind of why.
I love the term. I can,
Me too. Let's bring it back. Alienism. Let's bring it back. But, just kind of examining why people do the things that they do and why certain people are capable of things because of their things they've experienced in their own lives and all of that. That's really the crux of the show. And, I think that art is supposed to examine all of that and to make you look at things in a different way and to see a person's experience that you may not think you can relate to, and then make you relate to it by, you know, an entertaining story. And I think that that's something I'm really proud of about, you know, the show. I think it really does that. And I think that it shows, you know, people my age, you know, these issues that we're hearing about, especially today, like every day, all day in the news, and kind of getting to examine them through a different lens.
Now, let's get a little bit into the actual plot of Angel of Darkness. Now, the show, many different arms to it, but essentially the major plot deals with the kidnapping of the infant child of the Spanish consulate.
Yeah.
And that has giant political ramifications. And in the case of Sarah and the guys, it has the guys, like it's a buddy movie. But like it has very significant implications in terms of the way even it's investigated, the conflict between that's how much I think you play this character. Between Sarah's own agency and the police force and other investigators and alienists, as we call them. I wanted to get a sense from you is, stories about children can be very hard to watch because they immediately attack us at the basic level. Mm-hmm. For you, as an actor, what was it like going into that story, knowing the ramifications of how this was going to play itself out, and keeping focused on that story as all the other things are happening around you as well?
Yeah, I think when you're dealing with crimes that involve children, in this case, babies, very, very small children, I appreciated that, you know, the stakes of the case that, you know, we are investigating are very high, just automatically, because it's a baby. It's like a defenseless, sort of helpless creature that like needs, you know, adults to take care of it to survive. And so, you know, the time is of the essence. And I think that was something that was important, you know, that we always kept in our minds of, you know, for example, we have a big engagement party scene. Mm-hmm. That's kind of the Gilded Age, like the peak of Gilded Age, you know, like this big party scene. And I think we wanted to make sure that the stakes of a baby still being missing were present during this kind of frivolous activity. And, yeah. And I think that Sarah and Dr. Chrysler are kind of that compass, you know. I think John Moore sometimes John Moore as a character can get caught up in the kind of grandiosity of the Gilded. It was his engagement party after all.
And that's definitely something that plays out in the series, in the season, where especially you and Luke have, you know, I've referred to it, there are conversations about why you accept this society the way it is. Why are you going along with this when you see what it does to people you love and you care for?
Absolutely. So I think that's kind of a point of contention between John and Sarah this time around. And so, yeah, we you know, the stakes are really high from the beginning, knowing that there's a baby that's missing, and it, you know, and I, just from people that I know that have watched this season, they like, I think there were a lot of themes that they connected to. Like, I remember Daniel was talking about his wife felt like super connected to the second season because of the conversations about motherhood and like children and all of that stuff. And, you know, I don't have any kids, but I still, I think that's something that gets to people's core. Yeah. When you're kind of discussing all of that stuff, whether you have any children or not. You know?
Part of what I think it plays into this, of course, is that situation with Sarah. When you're dealing with a woman dealing with this, there's this inclination of, well, you know, let's go be mothery, as opposed to like, let's go solve the case. I mean, that's a core
Absolutely.
Conflict.
So I think that's especially, you know, it brings out that conversation because of the nature of the case and because of the nature of, you know, Sarah speaking to mothers who have lost their children and kind of questioning whether she's feeling the right emotions in those conversations. Is she, you know, and ultimately I think where we get to is that, you know, she doesn't have to make those decisions right now, and she doesn't have to choose, and she can continue, you know, her professional life and decide at another time.
You know, there is, over the season, there are many outstanding moments with you in the performance, but there's two in particular that I want to discuss, which is in the first episode where Sarah basically puts her foot down and says, there will not be an execution happening here. And then later on, when there's a discussion about Sarah being in charge of the investigation to look for the child. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to get from you, both of those, they were very poignant moments in the season, and very well done by you, by the way.
Thank you.
But I wanted to get a sense from you as an actor, what those two particular scenes were like, because that's when we see Sarah, she's, for lack of a better expression, really pushing off the petticoat.
Definitely. I think that, I felt like, there was a little bit of the character in the first go around that, she sort of had to keep things in and had to be still sort of demure and a little bit kind of stoic and kind of observing. And I really wanted to, in that first episode, the first time we see Sarah, she's driving her own carriage and kind of getting to work and getting to her job and moving people out of the way. And we see her at that execution kind of have this sort of outburst of emotion and anger, and she's very loud, and she's literally disrupting an event that she feels is not just and immoral and unethical and wrong. And so that was actually very kind of exciting as an actor to get to be in this room full of, we're with Ted Levine and Luke and literally a room full of men except for me and this woman who is potentially going to be executed. Yeah. And, kind of getting to scream out and there's somebody who's trying to restrain me. I'm like, get off of me. There was something kind of liberating of getting to be Sarah and kind of acting that way. And then in the other moment when I'm, are you talking about the conversation with the Senora Linares? Yeah. Yes. So, where she's kind of thinking that I'm a way to get to Dr. Chrysler. Mm-hmm. And can I, have him help her? And, we get to see Sarah put on this truthful, hard sell of herself, which is, doesn't it, you need to appreciate that, another woman is going to see you very clearly in a way that only a woman can. And I mean,
as a guy, what I found very interesting about that it looked at the notion of prejudice and discrimination, even within the groups where we sometimes automatically make monolithic decisions like, oh, well, all women will do that. They all would agree on that. Whereas in actual fact, it's a woman talking to a woman who's like, well, I don't see you like that. And it's a very different point of view.
Yeah, and I think no matter how progressive the male characters of Dr. Chrysler and John Moore are, there's still men living during this time, and they still have kind of blind spots towards women. And I think that Sarah kind of, reaching out to this woman and showing her that she understands, and she's never going to call her crazy, know.
Do you now? I'll ask this. You may or may not be able to tell me. Is there going to be more?
This was the journey. There's two books, and I think something we've always felt is that each. The Alienist and Angel of Darkness really do stand on their own. Of course, it'll deepen your experience watching the Angel of Darkness if you've seen the Alienist, but there is a world where you could just watch the Angel of Darkness.
They totally stand on their own.
They do. And yes, so I mean, as of now, that's all that I've planned for and have been told. But of course, I've made it a policy to never say never to anything, and who knows.
Fingers crossed. I wanted to, and I thank you so much for joining us today for this. And it's been wonderful as always with you. There's always a great advantage that happens, I guess, from working on a project is you get the hindsight of time. Time has passed. It was several months ago that Angel of Darkness debuted. Several months ago that you made it. Looking back on it now, the full season, what are you most proud of?
Well, I'm very proud, and something that I wasn't able to talk about as much when it was when I was doing press when it debuted, because we were sort of trying to still keep this mystery of the Libby Hatch of it all. But something that I am very proud of is the relationship between Sarah Howard and between Libby Hatch, the character who is ultimately the culprit. And, I really having that again, this woman to woman relationship between them, and kind of they are so similar, and just, you know, Libby went in a different direction to Sarah, like one day, you know, and kind of seeing what became of her journey, and sort of the pain of Sarah knowing that that could have been her with one different circumstance. And so I'm really proud of their relationship, and Rosie McEwen, who played Libby Hatch, is so extraordinary.
Wonderful.
Really wonderful. And I just love her so much. So that's something that I definitely love. And I think I'm just proud of getting again to almost, you know, you say you want the things that you make to be timely and relevant, and, you know, use all of those words that everybody loves. And sometimes but it's weird to say that, because they're timely and relevant for reasons that you wish weren't there. You know, you wish you still weren't dealing with, you know, peaceful protests being turned into, you know, violent things, and police corruption, and women's rights, and the sort of explosion of Black Lives Matter right at around this time that this was that the show was airing. And so of course you wish that those things had been magically solved since the time of Sarah Howard and Dr. Chrysler, and they just haven't. And but I am proud that we do examine those things, sort of unbeknownst to the explosion of it, you know, this year. In the 90s, they were examined by Caleb Carr. And then when we made the show, they were examined, and then they proved to be super relevant. And again, it's kind of course, the show is entertainment at the end of the day, but I do think that it has something to say. And I do think that it has, you know, something to say, especially to young people, to give them hopefully that entertaining history lesson of the beginnings of some of the things that we're still seeing.
Well, Sarah, Dakota, I have to say, with Sarah Howard, you have given us much more than an entertaining history lesson. You've given us a great experience. And thank you so much for today. On behalf of the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, I want to thank you. We all want to thank you for joining us and sharing your experiences, your process, and your craft with your fellow artists. And I have to say, you know, I hope there's more, because you guys just do such a bang-on job with this. And I think it's a great series. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. This was great.